Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Los Angeles, Columbus, Ohio, Dayton, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Lexington, Kentucky, Burbank, California, and Honolulu. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. And your show is still probably the most popular news show in America. I find out about Bob Woodward on your show and what actually happened during Watergate, and then nobody else repeats that story. Isn't that interesting? That didn't get repeated.
Well, it's crazy. And the craziest part is I knew Bob Woodward pretty well. I mean, Bob Woodward lived right down the street from me when I was a kid in Georgetown. And, you know, he was considered kind of moderate. I mean, he was considered non-political. He was a hero of journalism. You know, maybe we don't vote for the same people, but I mean, I didn't think of myself as, you know, on another planet from Bob Woodward. No one ever mentioned the possibility that he was working with the intel agencies. But he literally was. He was a naval intel officer, and he's done a lot over the ensuing 50 years to try and stifle that. And there have been a couple independent journalists over that time who've gotten to the truth of it and confronted him about it. And he's gone completely bananas trying to deny it or suppress it. But you know why this is never talked about is because that's just the state of play in Washington, D.C., where the Washington Post itself is an organ of the intel agencies, and so is the New York Times. And so once you start thinking about, and again, I lived all in the middle of this for like 35 years, and I never thought about it one time. Once you start to notice it, then your world falls apart, and you can't be friends with people, and they hate you, and you have to leave, and you know, you wind up speaking at Trump rallies, which I just did. I never thought I would ever do. I mean, never in my life thought I would. I don't even vote, and here I am doing this. So once you start pulling the thread, then it all kind of comes apart, is the truth.
What was it when did you start to notice?
Well, it was Trump. I mean, I'll tell you, this is such a weird thing. I mean, it's always like the kind of weird thing that begins a transformative experience in your life, but it was NATO. It was hearing the reaction of my neighbors to Trump's criticism, mild criticism of NATO. NATO is a force for bad in the world, for evil. Obviously, I despise NATO and think it should be disbanded. That's my view now. But, you know, 9 years ago, I hadn't spent 30 seconds thinking about NATO since the fall of the Berlin Wall, because I wasn't even sure why we still had NATO. I mean, I knew they blew up the Balkans for some reason. I didn't really know why. I didn't take the time to learn. He said NATO should pay its fair share or something in Europe. I mean, very mild criticism. And all of a sudden, everyone I knew was like ready to lynch the guy. And I remember asking somebody, well, what about his criticism do you think is unfair? And that person couldn't answer the question. Like, no one could actually defend NATO. What's the point of NATO? There's no Soviet Union. Like, what are we doing here? It's kind of a ghost alliance that's marching on. You know what I mean? And nobody had a real answer for it. They hated him for asking the question. And when I saw that, it was so unreasonable, stupid and small-minded and reactionary. It was so beneath what I thought these people were about. I thought these were smart people with kind of a rational worldview. And it turned out they were not smart. They were not rational at all. They were every bit as reactionary as any drunken Russian peasant from the 19th century. I mean, they were like out of a Tolstoy novel, actually. They were superstitious. They were cruel. They were utterly selfish. Like, I didn't even know that. I thought they were like smart, impressive people. I had no idea. And so it was Trump and it wasn't even Trump. It was the reaction to Trump that completely blew my mind.
Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Los Angeles, Columbus, Ohio, Dayton, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Lexington, Kentucky, Burbank, California, and Honolulu. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.